Killer dolls, demonic nuns, and sadistic clowns. While we may take it for granted that every superhero adventure has more to come, other continuations might surprise you. These 13 horror classics are slated for a sequel. Valak is back, baby! The demonic nun who's been haunting the Conjuring universe ever since the second film in the franchise is getting her very own sequel. The nun terrorized audiences back in 2018, scaring up a whopping $365 million across the globe. Screenwriter Akila Cooper is going to pen the script for The Nun 2. The film will take place in 1950s France, with Sister Irene of the original nun being summoned to stop Valak's killing spree. Bonnie Aarons is set to reprise her role as a demonic villain. Thaisa Farmiga will be back as Sister Irene, and Storm Reed is being cast in a lead role as a nun. In our current age of sequels, remakes, and reboots of what can sometimes feel like every significant film ever made, revisiting one of the most iconic horror films of all time was all but inevitable. And sure enough, a new trilogy is in the works. The original Exorcist centered on a 12-year-old girl, played by Linda Blair, who was possessed by a terrifying demon. Her mother, played by Ellen Burstyn, hires two priests to perform an exorcism. Although both priests died in the original film, Burstyn will be reprising her role, aiding new protagonist Leslie Odom Jr. as he searches for help with his own possessed child. Want to play a game? Well, Jigsaw certainly does. The notorious serial killer is coming back. In August 2022, it was announced that Saw X will arrive in theaters on October 27, 2023, but recently just got moved up to September 29, 2023, just in time for Halloween. And Tobin Bell himself, the actor who appears as a Jigsaw killer in every installment, except for 2021's Spiral, will slash his way back onto the screen. The film will be directed by Kevin Gruer, who previously helmed Saw 6 and Saw the Final Chapter. Stephen King has created some truly scary stories, but none are quite as disturbing as Pet Sematary. However, there's something irresistible about the novel, and Hollywood keeps returning to the Insidious story. There was a film adaptation in 1989, followed by a sequel in 1992. It was then rebooted in 2019, with Jason Clarke playing a father who discovers the woods behind his house can bring the dead back to life, with terrifying results. John Lithgow played the well-meaning Judd Crandall in the 2019 version, the neighbor who foolishly tells Clarke's character about the sour ground behind his home. Now we're going to learn how Judd first discovered the unhallowed part in Pet Sematary Bloodlines.
Something that brings things back.
A prequel directed and co-written by Lindsay Beer, the film will take place in 1969 and will show Judd and his friends banding together to face the darkness that holds their hometown under its sway. Jackson White of Hulu's Tell Me Lies will star as young Judd, and he'll be joined by two acting legends, David Duchovny of The X-Files and Pam Grier of Jackie Brown. While the nearly silent A Quiet Place stays entirely focused on one small family, the sequel, A Quiet Place Part 2, zooms out. That film brings the surviving characters from the first film into contact with a small, peaceful community that has managed to stay isolated from the sound-seeking monstrosities prowling the world around them. Now a third A Quiet Place film is on the docket, but Paramount is positioning it as a spin-off, according to Deadline. Writer-director Michael Sarnowski will oversee A Quiet Place Day 1. The leads will be played by Lupita Nyong'o and Joseph Quinn of Stranger Things fame. Nyong'o posted a cast photo to Instagram in March 2023, revealing that Jimon Hunso would return to the Quiet Place universe, likely reprising his role as Man on Island from A Quiet Place Part 2. We don't know much more about the plot, but we do know that A Quiet Place Day 1 wrapped production in mid-April 2023. Theatrical release for A Quiet Place Day 1 comes on March 8, 2024. Killer dolls amass devoted cult audiences by combining innocent childhood playthings with evil, murder, mayhem, and usually a little comedy. Following in the steps of Chucky, Annabelle, and The Boy comes Megan, a high-tech take on the formula. In this film, a toy company's roboticist creates Megan, an eerily lifelike doll with sophisticated artificial intelligence on board. She's able to learn and adapt to make life better for the child she's imprinted upon. In this case, the roboticist's niece. Naturally, things go awry, and Megan becomes violently overprotective of her young charge. Megan earned $30 million in its January 2023 opening weekend, far exceeding industry prognostications. Just days later, Universal took the early steps to bring a sequel to the big screen. Actors Allison Williams and Violet McGraw are returning for the sequel, as is Akila Cooper, who pens the original script. Expect Megan 2.0 to dance into theaters on January 17, 2025.
Hi, Katie. Hi, Megan.
Every few years, another Cloverfield movie comes along. Cloverfield sequels have historically been developed under codenames and aren't revealed to be part of the popular franchise until their trailers hit the big and small screens. Or, in the case of 2018's The Cloverfield Paradox, just before the film hit Netflix on Super Bowl Sunday. All three Cloverfield movies are dramatically different from one another. 2008's Cloverfield is a found-footage horror movie about a stampeding monster. 2016's 10 Cloverfield Lane takes place almost entirely in a bunker. And The Cloverfield Paradox is a space thriller. Considering this history of secrecy, it's likely nobody will know what the fourth Cloverfield movie is really about until just before it's released, which will be some time in the next few years. According to The Hollywood Reporter, franchise producer J.J. Abrams hired writer Joe Barton to write the screenplay in January 2021. In September 2022, Babak Anvari landed the director's job. Almost everything else about the movie remains a mystery. In 2005, Hollywood took a gamble on Constantine, based on a relatively obscure DC Comics title, Hellblazer. Keanu Reeves portrays the titular John Constantine, a sardonic, world-weary exorcist who can talk to demons and angels and move back and forth between Earth and the underworld. Budgeted at a steep $100 million, Constantine earned $230 million at the worldwide box office. This doesn't cement blockbuster status, but it is enough to earn a cult following. John Constantine would go on to inspire the short-lived but well-received 2014 series Constantine, where he was played by Matt Ryan. Nearly 20 years after Constantine hit the silver screen, Warner Brothers started to consider making a second film. In September 2022, Deadline reported that a follow-up was underway. Reeves is set to reprise the role of John Constantine, while original movie director Francis Lawrence will helm the sequel. Screenwriter Akiva Goldsman will pen the script and produce. However, when Warner Brothers' DC adaptation department leaders James Gunn and Peter Safran unveiled their plans for the next few years, Constantine didn't even merit a mention. Reeves told Cinema Blend in March 2023, "We're trying, I don't know if it's gonna happen." Writer Akiva Goldsman gave a semi-positive update in July 2023, telling Bingeworthy that he's figured out the plot for Constantine 2. But as he put it, "I just haven't started typing yet."
I need a mirror. Now, at least 3 feet high.
The 2007 film I Am Legend starred Will Smith as Robert Neville, the seemingly sole human survivor of an apocalyptic plague that transformed most of the world's humans into a terrifying cross between zombies and vampires. However, Neville eventually encountered another pair of survivors, a woman and a young boy who were both also immune to the virus. The ending of the film didn't leave a lot of room for Smith to return for a sequel, since it saw Neville sacrificing himself in order to save the other two. But an alternate ending found Neville surviving and having a darker meaning to the title I Am Legend. According to the original film's writer Akiva Goldsman, the sequel, announced in 2022, would follow that other ending. Goldsman told Deadline, "This will start a few decades later than the first. We trace back to the original Matheson book and the alternate ending. What Matheson was talking about was that man's time on the planet, as the dominant species had come to an end. That's a really interesting thing we're going to get to explore." Michael B. Jordan is set to headline I Am Legend 2, along with Smith. However, not long after I Am Legend 2 was announced, Smith made headlines for slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars, putting the fate of several of his future projects in jeopardy. Since the release will likely come several years after the incident, it's possible that I Am Legend 2 will still go ahead with Smith attached. As to when we'll actually see Smith and Jordan meet up, we're not exactly sure. Speaking with Bingeworthy, Goldsman said that he'd begun writing the script for I Am Legend 2 before the Writers Guild of America strike had begun. But at the moment, the screenplay is on pause. The rare supernatural horror movie that's also a 1980s period piece and something of a biopic starring an Oscar-winning actor, The Pope's Exorcist was a solid hit, earning a tidy $66 million in spring 2023. Russell Crowe stars as Father Gabriele Amort, a character based on the real person of the same name, who allegedly spent years casting out demons on behalf of the Roman Catholic Church. The Pope's Exorcist tells just a small part of Amort's story, specifically the time during which he claimed to have expelled tens of thousands of demons. That makes for a lot of sequel potential, and indeed, just 2 weeks after The Pope's Exorcist hit movie theaters, Screen Gems began development on another movie about Amort's demon-hunting adventures. No word yet on whether Crowe will return to the role, or if the original film's Helmer, Julius Avery, is in line to direct the sequel.
It's okay, Mommy. Henry's okay.
Not only one of the most consistently creepy franchises in recent years, the Conjuring universe is also one of the most lucrative series of any kind, raking in over $2 billion at the global box office. The series was set off by the 70s set horror classic from 2013, about paranormal investigators Lorraine and Ed Warren, who look into claims of a dark and evil presence at a spooky rural farmhouse. The Warrens' ghost hunting continues in 2016's The Conjuring 2, and 2021's The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It. With plenty more ghost stories to tell and a receptive paying audience ready to watch them, the Conjuring franchise will expand again with a fourth movie, subtitled Last Rites. According to The Hollywood Reporter, lead studio New Line has already signed up David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, who penned both Conjuring sequels, to write the script for the fourth movie. Franchise originating producers James Wan and Peter Safran will also return to oversee the new film. Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson are once more playing the roles of Lorraine and Ed Warren, although we don't know the plot or the release date. More importantly, will this be the final Conjuring movie? Well, when asked that question in a January 2023 interview with Collider, Wan responded, "You never know, we'll see." A horror flick with a familiar format and an original premise. Smile is one of the few non-franchise horror hits of recent years, so successful that it's probably the first in what will be a whole series of movies. The first full-length feature from writer-director Parker Finn, Smile mines terror and discomfort out of a usually friendly facial expression. The simple smile becomes twisted and unsettling when it's plastered on the faces of those possessed by an evil presence. After witnessing a college professor's inexplicable death, a student experiences haunting visions of a creepy, smiling creature. Thus, a string of horrific smiles and deaths begin, until crafty psychiatrist Dr. Rose Cotter figures out how and why the evil virus strikes. Smile grossed $217 million on a relatively meager budget, so it was a hit in every possible way for Paramount Pictures. When the studio presented its upcoming slate at CinemaCon in April 2023, it announced that a sequel to Smile was in its early stages. No details were provided in regards to cast, a director, a screenwriter, or a release date.
You're going to die! You're going to die!
One of the most notable entries in the horror subgenre of killer clown movies, 2016's Terrifier indeed terrified audiences with the gruesome and murderous actions of Art the Clown, a dryly humorous prankster not unlike a mix of Pennywise and Freddy Krueger, determined to kill 3 women on a cursed Halloween evening. With an ultra-low budget of $35,000, Terrifier enjoyed a modest rollout, only to turn into a cult classic and prompt a 2022 sequel, Terrifier 2. In May 2023, Deadline announced that a third franchise entry, Terrifier 3, would soon haunt movie theaters. Set to start filming in the final weeks of 2023, Terrifier 3 filmmakers are working toward a release date of sometime in late 2024. As for the plot, writer-director Damien Leone tweeted that Terrifier 3 will pick right up after Part 2. However, he also told Variety that it will be more in line with the tone of the first film. Leone said in the interview, "I want to shift back a bit to the tone of Part 1, which I felt was a little more simplistic and old-school gritty slasher. I want this one to go back in that direction, and I want this to be the scariest one of the trilogy. This one will actually have a little bit more of an evil overtone to it. So this is going to be hopefully the scariest and the darkest?"